All right, hello everyone. We're going to get started. My name is Ronn Jefferson. I'm the product manager for Geberit in North America. I'm really happy to be here with you today. Thanks for taking some time. I'm broadcasting live from Chicagoland. It's raining now. With me, moderating, Sarah Bernhardt. So thank you, Sarah. She's also here in Chicagoland. And a late addition, Edward Aguilar, our West Region Sales Manager. He'll be monitoring the Q&A at the end. So thanks to both of you. And if you have any questions or anything, please feel free to submit them in the chat. All right. So to start, I'm going to hopefully try to keep things simple today. That's my plan. In the next 30 to 40 minutes or so, you'll hear answers to the most frequently asked questions related to service of in-wall systems, and you'll learn some key troubleshooting tips to keep your clients happy. But before I dig in any further, I do want to offer up some additional thanks, and that's to the people on our front lines, our direct sales team, our sales reps, customer service, and tech support who contributed their experience to this presentation. And in the following areas we're going to talk today, in these 10 tips, some general questions about service. What happens? What should I do if my toilet keeps running? What should I do if the flush valve isn't working? How about what happens if things are leaking? What if there's some condensation behind the actuator plate? And a few more topics. I know I only listed about 5, but I promise there's 10 tips at least. Promise. Tip number 1, question I get quite frequently is, can I repair the Geberit product? How easy is it to do it? Can I do it myself? Do I have to tear down the wall? What if I need to change some things? These are very common questions that come up both to me and to the other members of our team. And my tip here is that, yes, the product is repairable and even you can do it yourself. So let me walk you through how that would happen. First, remove the actuator plate. You can see there's no breaking or no hammering or smashing to get in. Everything that needs to be serviced is behind the flush actuator plate, and that can be done without tools, as you've seen. Turn off the water and flush the water out of the tank. Then you can remove the filling valve and the flush valve, again, by hand without tools. The flush valve, it's a simple gasket seal which can be cleaned off or replaced as needed, as well as the valve seat itself. The same steps more or less apply here now for the fill valve. Inside is a diaphragm that shuts off the fill valve at the right time. It can be cleaned off or replaced. Then the fill valve is put back together and returned to the tank. Simple and pretty painless. Reinstall everything. Of course, turn on the water, fill the tank back up, and put everything back in reverse. And that's it. As I said, simple. Everything is behind the actuator plate. It's tool-free access. There's no need to break or smash. And on top of this, the fill and flush valve in the tanks are designed for this type of service and for a long life. So the number or the frequency of the maintenance is also reduced. Here's a second tip. If you have questions, here's a good resource to check. If you need a plumber, if you need someone to recommend you a plumber, if you're looking for replacement parts, how about a distributor? What if you have questions about the warranty? Looking for a showroom where you can see the products or your clients can see the products? You need to set up a training or have someone come to your office on a sales visit? The website is a great tool, geberit.us. All those things I just mentioned can be found on the website itself, including customer support, phone number, email, tech support phone number, email, as well as locators for showrooms, distributors, and installers and sales representatives. So second tip, check out the website if you have questions. Now tip number 3, this one is a biggie. We're going to take some time to walk through it. The toilet doesn't flush. What do I do? Where do I start? Help. To me, it starts really with the basics. And I know it seems kind of funny or simple. And it reminds me of the movie Christmas Vacation. Clark's wife asked him if he plugged in all the lights. If you've seen that, you'll know what I'm talking about. But anyhow, it comes down to that. Make sure the stop valve is open. If the toilet doesn't flush, the first thing is there water in the tank? So is the stop valve open? Is water, if it is water actually flowing? And then for powered versions, is power on? I think these are pretty basic. From there, if you've crossed those off the list, the next thing that should be done is to identify which kind of a tank is behind the wall, whether it's a Sigma 2x6, 2x4, or a Mega 2x6. And there are 2 ways to do this. One is because you're asking, it's behind the wall, how will I know? One is by looking here at this splash guard. The model number for the tank will be on there and the model information. As well, inside the tank is a pad printing with the same information. Now, the reason this is important is because inside the tank, as you could imagine, between a 2x6 and 2x4, for example, the parts are different. So spare parts are also then correspondingly different. So second step, identify what kind of a product you have. Now, in the third step of this, tip number 3, if the toilet isn't flushing, the next thing to do is identify what kind of a flush mechanism is actually installed, whether it's manually operated, starting from left to right, whether it's manually operated, electronically operated, hydraulically operated, like a Sigma 70, for example, or pneumatic, a push button, let's say. It's important to identify this because, one, it sets the parts, but mostly it also sets the troubleshooting steps, which I'll go through next. So you find yourself with an in-wall system and it doesn't flush, and you have a manual mechanism. This is a big chart. I'm going to simplify it and condense it. There's 3 main areas of concern. One is about water pressure loss, the second is installation, and the third is something is defective. Now, from our experiences, we know that most of the questions fall within a small grouping out of those 3 big categories. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail of the main ones. Starting on the left, the actuator push rods, this is a very common one. They are designed to be sized to fit the wall thickness of the installation. If you have a very thin wall, then these rods need to be snapped off and shortened just like it's showing here. In the case that that doesn't happen, push rod doesn't move and the tank doesn't flush. So one of the things to check out is, are the push rods too long? If they are, then please shorten them. The second thing that can happen is the push rods can actually come unlocked. And to lock them, install them and then make a 90-degree clockwise rotation until you hear a click, and that locks them in place. It can happen over time that they vibrate out of position, and then when someone pushes a button on the actuator, it doesn't flush. The third thing is about the actuator rods themselves positioned correctly. As you can see here, there is a shoulder which should be flush with the frame, this main frame. When the rods are installed, the first thing to do is push them up against the frame, and that's the starting point. If they're not in that position, then they may be too far back or too far forward and things don't work properly. And finally, the fourth thing I want to touch on with respect to the manual products and how they can contribute to not flushing is that the lifter itself, the interface between the lifter and the yokes is not in place. So these lifter arms are not inside the yokes, or it could be reversed, for example. Those are the primary reasons that manual systems do not flush. Now moving on to electronic, in this case, the main root cause groups are a little bit different. It starts with power loss. Of course, I mentioned that earlier. Also then dirt or debris, the installation steps themselves. Systems could be, I call it, out of sorts. And then finally, something could be broken or defective. Again, in this case, I'm going to focus on a few root causes and their corrective actions. Again, number one, when it comes to electronics, power, power, power. So AC power, that it's on, that it's working, that the transformer is working and plugged in or connected to mains power. And if it's battery operated, making sure the batteries are at full capacity. Beyond that, again, the same issue comes up as with manual, ensuring that this connection here between the lifter and the flush valve yoke is made correctly. Without that, the toilet may not flush. The other big scenario, if something isn't defective, is that these plugs for power and for the servo mechanism are not installed correctly or not pushed in far enough, and the signals just aren't going through. In that case, correctly attach them and then you're golden. Now moving on to the hydraulic lifter, again, there's four sort of root cause groups: water pressure loss, dirt and debris, installation, and defect or broken. The main causes fall in four categories. The first is really low water pressure. In this case, replace the lifter with a new unit. The other three I will talk about here in more details now. So it could be that this inlet filter shown on the left is dirty or clogged. Simply take it out and clean it. That can prevent the system from flushing. Also, these pneumatic tubes, which are in the actuator frame, if they're not installed correctly or if they're kinked, then the system may not work properly. This is a reoccurring theme, as you've heard also in manual and electronic, but the interface between the lifter and the flush valve yokes needs to be in the right way for things to interact and to work. And then finally, the question is, how do I know if this lifter inside is working, or if this frame and actuator buttons on the outside are not working? Well, here's a simple trick. These hoses which actuate the lifter, you can blow into them, and if the lifter moves and flushes, then you know that the issue is in the frame here, and then the frame should be replaced. If you blow in them and you've done these other steps as well beforehand and then blow in it and it doesn't work, then you know then there's an issue with the lifter. So that's kind of a key decision point there. Finally, with respect to lack of a flush, we'll look at the pneumatic push buttons. Not surprisingly, it follows a very similar pattern to the hydraulic lifter. Again, water pressure loss, dirt and debris, some issues with the installation, and then defect or broken parts. In this case, I'm going to focus on one in particular here, that the pneumatic hose that connects between the push button and the lifter is kinked, dirty, or filled with water. This can happen. In those cases, the hose needs to be replaced. Now, there are some other additional conditions which could be met. Here it is, 4 out of 4. The interface between the lifter and the yoke needs to be correct. The signal tubes, pneumatic tubes, need to be installed in the correct orientation, as shown here. And finally, once again, I'm out here in front of the wall. How do I know if it's the lifter or the buttons themselves? Can take the same kind of an approach to see. So that was if the flush doesn't work. Now, the other biggie that's related to that is the toilet runs and runs and runs, and water just goes into the bowl and doesn't stop. Here, we don't need to worry about if the water's on, if there's power, and so on. We already know those things are going on because the bowl is running. So we start by first identifying the tank, and for the same reasons that were previously discussed. Now, there are a lot of ways to start this, but my recommendation is this. this can save you some time right out of the gate. If the water in the tank is filling and filling and filling and filling, and the water is getting so high that it's going into the overflow and down through and into the bowl, like this, that's a good indicator that right away it's an issue with the fill valve. This could save you, again, could be a time saver. So in that case, I recommend to follow these steps. So if the water keeps rising up and then spills over and goes into the tube, you can see this in the tank, then I would start by checking to see if the float on the fill valve is stuck. Could be that it's adjusted too high. It could be that the seal needs to be replaced, as you saw in the video, or the entire valve could be broken or defective in some manner. Now, the nice thing is that on the splash guard, information about the setting for the valve is located, so it gives you how high the water should be. Also, the replacement part numbers for the seals, which go inside the valve here, and then finally some instructions how to adjust the float level if for some reason that is the issue. So if the toilet is running on, I would recommend step 1 is to check to see if the water is going through the overflow. And then right away you know it's the fill valve. If not, then you start going through the same sequence as we just went through when the toilet doesn't flush. So if it's manual, electronic, hydraulic, or pneumatic actuation, and go through the same set of root cause and corrective action process. In most cases, now we're talking about a manual valve, it's an issue with if it's not the fill valve as we just discussed, then it's an issue with the seal of the flush valve, which typically could need to be replaced, or it could be the fill valve. Those are the main drivers there. When it comes to electronics, in my experience, if it's not an issue with the valve or the seal, or something else isn't holding up the actual flush valve, then it's the valve itself is a bit out of sorts, I would say. And what you do here, basically you reboot by turning power on and off. That's would be my recommendation. In this case, if the toilet is running and you have an electronic version, and you've already eliminated some of these other issues as root causes. Moving on to the lifter for this 70 series family. Again, follow the same order. These are typically from most probable to least probable, also easiest to figure out to most difficult. As example, in this case, the biggest defect or potential defect is in the lifter itself, and that this pistons won't go up, pull the flush valve up in time, or it doesn't return to its starting position. In this case, what I could recommend that you could do is to actually run water through the servo lifter to kind of rinse it out, move the pistons by hand and see if that sort of frees them from their stuck position. If that doesn't work, then the only recourse after that is to replace the lifting device. Again, first you would check all these things. So for example, you would have checked to see if the fill valve was defective, if the flush valve seal, and so on. This is the last, as I said, the last resort. Last but not least, the pneumatic device. Same set of root causes, same sequence. In this case, it's a little bit easier. Well, maybe not easier, but more straightforward. If the lifter doesn't go back to its starting position, then something's wrong and have to be replaced. Now, what happens if you can't flush the waste out of the toilet? And I flush it again, and it doesn't go, and it doesn't go. My advice here then is, as it says, prepare to call a plumber. And the reason I say that is because the troubleshooting steps follow this sequence. First, which we can do, check the tank water level, is it too low? Somehow, it could be that somehow the adjustment is off and the water level of the tank is not set to the factory conditions, the value you see on the splash guard. And that could be contributing to it. After that, it's really about the bowl and it's about the plumbing. It's not about the in-wall product anymore. What do I mean by that? It could be that it's not, the performance is not to par or to expectation because the bowl itself is not part of an approved combination with Geberit in-wall systems. We haven't put our stamp of performance onto it. It could also be that the bowl is defective, and it could also be then, these are even worse, that the venting is not correct or adequate, or it could be that the vent is blocked. This sometimes happens with animals and other kind of debris block the vent, and this can cause bad performance in the waste evacuation. Lastly, it could be that the drainage line is blocked. It could also be that it's not sloped properly, which can lead to the waste just sort of pooling around. So in any of those cases, if the water level is not too low, then these other solutions pretty much required to have someone come in and make some major review, unfortunately. That's if it doesn't flush the way I want it to. Now the next topic is what happens if there's leaking. How do I know if it's the bowl is somehow broken or cracked? Bowl A, is it the connection set? B, between the bowl and the tank itself? The connection set is equivalent to the wax ring of a floor mounted toilet, or is it C? Is it the tank inside the wall? Is that really kind of leaking? How do I know which one it is? Well, here's my suggestion. If someone flushes a toilet and water starts to just rush out between the wall and the bowl and it's flowing out during the flush cycle, and then it stops sort of flowing after the flush cycle, that points right away to a problem with the bowl or with the connection set or the seals there. If it seems like the moisture is coming from behind the wall, then that points more to the tank itself. Now the challenge now, as you can see, partly is that the bowl and the connection set present them in the same way. So how do I determine which one it could be? Here's a trick that I've used over the years. First, add some dye into the bowl itself, some food coloring. Flush your toilet, and you have to dye water, then you see it on the floor, then you know it's not an issue with the tank. If you flush the toilet and water starts going everywhere and you see the dye color, then you know that it's not the tank, but it is either the bowl or the connection set. And to be honest, most likely it's going to be the connection set. So my suggestion then is to replace the set and the seals and then go through and see if that addresses it. Then finally, if you have that replaced and there's still an issue and water is rushing onto the floor during the flushing cycle, then I'm guessing there's some kind of an internal crack inside the bowl, and probably the only solution then is to secure a new bowl. I just talked about leaking, so what if the tank leaks? Normally this shouldn't happen, but my suggestion is if it does happen, you really should contact us. Now,
the Bernese Alps. Deep within the walls of the Eiger's imposing north face lies the birthplace of the Jungfrau Railway, a revolutionary feat of engineering over 100 years old. It's not far from here that in 1964, another technical revolution was built behind a wall of a different kind. This time it was in the bathroom, the Geberit concealed cistern. This innovation celebrates its 50th anniversary in 2014. Here at the Hotel Eiger in Grindelwald, these cisterns were used for the first time almost half a century ago.
Also meine Eltern haben das Haus im 1962 übernommen und haben sich überlegt, wie sie das neu werden gestalten. Ein neuer Bau, ein 60er-Jahre-Bau, relativ modern für unser Dorf. Und haben mit der Firma Ruf einen Partner gefunden, wo sie Badezimmer haben entwickeln konnten.
Im Hotel ist ja so, dass das Badzimmer nicht allzu gross kann sein. Die wollen lieber Räume um das Bett herum haben. Und dann sind ja die UP-Spielkästen neu auf den Markt gekommen. Und es war platzsparend und darum hat man das so probiert.
Also die ersten paar Jahre hat man Gäste gehabt. Sie haben gesehen, ja, wo ist denn überhaupt der Spülknopf von diesem WC? Also wir mussten helfen, um überhaupt die Spülung in Gang zu setzen. Es war natürlich ein Risiko, dass man den Spülkasten in der Wand integrieren, also hinter die Wand setzen, nicht gegen dran kommt. Aber es hat sich bewährt und gezeigt, dass der Spülkasten sehr gut funktioniert und wir 50 Jahre lang eigentlich keinen Spülkasten auftun oder eine Wand wieder öffnen.
Since then, this Geberit innovation has in many places become the standard. In 2013, the bathrooms at the Hotel Eiger were fully refurbished. Once again, Ruoff services were called upon. So what would they actually find behind the wall?
Ja, das war für mich auch ein bisschen neu, weil ich die so erstens nie eingebaut und selber eigentlich auch nicht gerade gesehen, wie sie früher ausgesehen haben. Darum war es natürlich umso spannender. Aber dann natürlich auch schön zu sehen, dass die absolut noch intakt waren. Und das ist natürlich ein Kunststoffteil, das sehr robust gebaut ist. Ja, schon vor 50 Jahren so produziert. Im Hotel Eiger haben wir jetzt so die neueste Generation von diesen Duofix-Spülkästen eingebaut. Und wir hoffen natürlich, dass das auch wieder gut 50 Jahre funktioniert. Wer weiß, mein Sohn ist 4 Monate alt, vielleicht in 30 Jahren ist er dran mit der nächsten Sanierung und er sieht, was wir verbaut haben. Das wäre natürlich schön für alle.
So the tank shouldn't leak. I hope you feel comfortable and confident of that after watching that video of the tank that he found in the wall that was 50 years old, one of the first ever in-wall tanks. Another reason to feel confident is all the tanks are leak tested in the factory. None of them leave that don't pass, and they're blow molded one piece that minimizes openings and leak pass. Additionally, Geberit tanks are backed with a lifetime warranty against defect. So if there is a leak, please contact us. Now, then the question becomes, if there is something, can I replace just the tank if there's some kind of a hole in it? Unfortunately, no, the entire system should be replaced. You have to get into the wall. There's no patch per se. And we get called on this about once or twice per year. So if something happens, please contact us and we'll try to work together with you. Now, from time to time, there's stories of condensation on the backside of the actuator plate, so inside the wall. Here's my advice. Check the water temperature inside the tank, inside the bowl. When the water temperature gets about 65 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 degrees centigrade, this can happen. This is because of the differential of the air temperature between in the wall and out of the wall. Now, how can the water temperature get that high? It could be that the system is installed on an outside wall. It could also be that in an environment where the cold water temperature is quite high, or we've had this in a few cases. The homeowners had a hydronic heating in their bathroom, and there was cross flow between that and the main cold water line, and so hot water was getting into the cold water, and they had 95 degrees water in their bowl, and of course they're having all kinds of condensation behind the wall. So the question is then, what do I do? What should someone do about this? Well, first of all, try to determine the source of this higher temperature water, and if possible, reduce it. If it's not possible, then I could suggest a few things. Here on the right, you can see normally the actuator frame is installed flush, so 0 millimeters space between the wall and the frame, I could suggest to have some spacers created to move the actuator off the wall a bit. This will allow some ventilation, just like you would have in your attic or crawl space, for example. It's the same idea. Secondly, I could suggest then maybe to apply some foam pads on the backside. For example, the kind that you might include with your outlets to keep the cold weather out, to help do that. And then if it's a metallic actuator, one way to help this could be to switch to a plastic-based actuator. These three may or may not resolve it. I can't be 100% tell you that with 100% certainty, but they can mitigate some of the effects. So everything's now installed. Imagine the situation. Someone sits down on the toilet and feels a bit bouncy. They feel a bit unsure. Is there something wrong with the bowl? Is there something wrong with the product inside the wall? Help me. I sort of came up with this checklist then. First and foremost, this type of feeling can be caused if the bowl is not secured tightly to the wall. So that's step one. Make sure that all the fasteners and everything is tight. The bowl is snug up against the wall. Secondly, if the wall is just a single layer of material, say a 1/2-inch drywall, that's not enough to support the bowl. This is as I say here, definitely a no-go. That could be a contributing factor. Most often, if it's not the bowl being loose, it's a matter of an air gap being between the wall material and the frame itself. So on the upper right here, the green check mark, you see the wall is directly against the tank and frame. This is how it should be, sandwiched completely together. In the lower one, down here, red X, there's a gap between. This will cause that feeling every time. In that case, the solution then is to open up the area and to fill in that gap. The most important area is actually down by the bowl itself. The upper level here by the actuator you could actually leave it open here, but down by the bowl, this material has to be filled in. Otherwise, that bouncy feeling will never go away. This is easy to check when the bowl is removed or the actuator is removed. You can see inside, for example. All right, last but not least, the questions are always coming up about touch-free products and how do I set them, how do I program them, especially if I want to go from, I want to activate a auto flush, for example. So this can be done in two ways. With Sigma 80, it can be done by hand or also with the Geberit remote. In that case, please contact our sales rep or our tech support to assist with that. And same for Sigma 10. So in addition to on and off, auto flush on and off by hand, Sigma 80 can also be changed into cleaning mode. The colors of the light bars can be changed, as well as setting the detection distance. This can all be done by hand. To give you an idea how this could look, I'll show you this now. Thank you, Sarah DiMartino and Jacqueline.
Hold both hands in front of the sensor. You have to wait until the blue line starts to flash. Then it will flash red. And then once it turns back to blue, you remove both hands. Now you block just the left sensor, and then once it flashes, you take your hand off and you block the left sensor until it goes to yellow and flashes again. Now to set it for auto flush, the right sensor has to be blinking twice. So every time you can remove your left hand, and if you wave your right hand, it will change the blinking light to either 1 blink, which means off, or 2 blinks, which means on. So now it's on 2. And then to set it, you block both sensors with both hands, and wait for the light to come back to blue. All right. This is set.
It's just that simple. All right. I see that we're running against the clock, so I'm going to skip the second video, but it'll be available in the this information which comes with. And I want to say I hope this really helped out today, and it can help you in your today and your future business. I know I had a great time listening and hearing stories from all the contributors. So please check out our website, give us a call or email if you have questions, additional questions, more troubleshooting needs, more service questions. Before I go to the chat and answer some questions, I would remind everyone, please, or urge you, please take a few minutes, fill out our survey. There's a link, or there will be a link in the chat window. We'll have a replay of this presentation on Thursday at 11 o'clock Central, and in 2 weeks, drainage and venting basics for in-wall, 2 sessions. If you haven't signed up, please do so. And if you need an invitation, just reach out to us here at Geberit. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Edward and say, Edward.
Hey, Ron, thanks. That was a very good presentation. In the chat box, I don't see any questions right now, but does anybody have a question?
What about you,
Ron?
Edward? You must have a question, Edward.
No, it was actually really thorough. There was some stuff I learned today. One thing, a comment maybe to think about is also, you know, with troubleshooting, if it doesn't flush, always check if the mud guard is there, because that's sometimes one of the causes is a missing mud guard, or not mud guard, splash guard.
Splash guard.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. I'll add that. What I'll do is I'll add that to the root cause corrective action list ahead of the next session. So it'll be also in the information which goes out so everyone will have it.
Okay, well done. Any questions out there? Here, we got a message. Oh.
Thanks, Georgia.
Georgia says thank you, very thorough.
Thank you for joining. Appreciate it. We still have a few more minutes if there are additional questions. I know I didn't go into a lot of detail, as much detail or drill down on a lot of topics as I could have in this time. I hope that I was able to pick the most important ones for you, the things that can help you on day to day. If you have additional questions, please, as I said, don't hesitate to reach out to us at geberit.us or at my email, ron.jefferson@geberit.com, and we'll be happy to help out.
All right. Hey, Ron, is this presentation will be available on the sales app?
Yes.
For future use?
Yes.
Okay, that was a question Jennifer asked.
Got it. Well, perfect. Then, if there aren't any questions, I'm glad to give everyone at least almost 2 minutes back from their busy days. Thanks again, everyone, for your attention and participation. And I will hopefully catch you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ron. Have a great day.